welcome everyone. My name is Christina Miner. I'm the host of Our Scars Speak, and we would hope that you can stay for this entire platform tonight to hear Valerie Mitchell's story about her breast cancer journey. But at the same time, after it ends, we would appreciate if you would go to our podcast, which are various platforms from Spotify to Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google, Stitcher, as well as subscribe to our YouTube channel and even our Facebook page. That would be greatly appreciated. And share the word. Share about Our Scars Speak, because we're really trying to get stories out here in the open for everyone to know what we've gone through and for everyone to be able to share their stories as well. And before I introduce Miss Valerie, I want to make for sure that this disclaimer that is also attached at the bottom, just to let everyone know, we're not here to give any type of medical advice, mental health advice, or anything of that nature. We're not telling you to go against your provider's treatment plan. Stick to what your providers have asked you to do. We truly encourage that. We're just here to give education and share our story. So without further ado, thank you so much, Valerie, for being here with us tonight. Valerie Mitchell, she's a licensed professional counselor, and I met her through Here for the Girls, which is an organization that we're both in. That's a nonprofit 501c3 that are for women under the age of 51 who's been diagnosed with breast cancer. And Valerie has just truly been a sister, friend, all of that to me. And I'm so glad she came tonight to share her story. And first and foremost, Valerie, I would love for you to just share with everyone, who's Valerie Mitchell? Not Valerie Mitchell, the survivor so much, which we know that's part of our lives, but who are you? Anything you like to share about you, what you do for a living, whatever you like to share.
You got it. Well, first, thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this. I'm really honored that you would invite me to be your guest. And so thank you. Thank you so much. As far as who I am, I'm a wife of a 31-year marriage, almost at the end of this month. I'm the mom of two boys. They are both young adults. I am a licensed professional counselor, as you mentioned before, and a business owner. But mostly I'm a person who just really, really enjoys being alive. I love dancing. I love going to theater. I love meeting new people and hearing their stories. I love helping people. I love what I do for a living as a professional counselor. It means a lot to me to be able to see people meet their goals and make progress on their journeys and heal their past hurts. And so I just feel very fortunate to be called to do that job.
Yeah, because it's definitely a calling with it. And I have to say, just from what I know of you, you are definitely operating highly within that calling, 100%. So as we move along, I would like for you now, if you don't mind, Valerie, to kind of share about, because a lot of times when we do interviews, and you're familiar with this as well, they don't really go into detail so much about before, breast cancer, like what was life like before breast cancer? And I just want you to kind of touch on that. Like, what was your life like? Like, from whatever point you want to start from, but just share kind of like what was going on.
Yeah, sure. And I probably need to add, I also live near a naval air base. And so there may be times where you might hear some planes flying over. I am safe, even though it sounds like they're going to land on my roof. So just in case that happens, just want you to know about that. But before I got diagnosed with breast cancer, I feel like I was kind of living the typical suburban mom life. We lived in the suburbs outside of Richmond, Virginia. My boys at that point were in high school and one, like kind of dealing with all of that.
Right.
My husband and I both had jobs in Richmond. I had a private practice counseling in Richmond that was doing well. And I was quite pleased because I had started that just a few years before. And it was really kind of what I call like surviving the teen years and making sure my boys survived their teen years and just getting them into adulthood. Yeah, so it's like, a lot of family time and just the things that you would associate kind of with, with raising teenagers and being with the family and taking care of a home and all of those good things. I did enjoy life because as a counselor, I kind of practice what I preach. I do my
Right.
best to do that and use those skills. So even before I had cancer, I was mindful of, the time that we have here and using it in the best way possible. But I also think that fear played a big part in my life, a bigger part than I really recognized. There were things that I would choose not to do because I was kind of afraid.
Right.
And I remember, lots of fear in raising children and like, oh Lord, please help me get them until, adulthood. But I think if, fear played a larger part in my life at that point too.
Okay, so fear played a larger part prior to breast cancer, but you were still trying to live on purpose and trying to get your family through, yourself through, sort of what I'm hearing you
Absolutely.
say. Okay, so if you can, because I know that, because also everyone, I have to share this part. She is Miss May 2023 of Here for the Girls. She's Calendar Ambassador with me, and she does so much advocacy work, which I'm sure she's going to kind of tap into that later. But I know you were diagnosed at 47, right? And that was in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
can you describe, life is going well, excuse the if you hear the lawnmower because there's someone cutting grass, but life was going kind of, going great
Mm-hmm.
because you had your businesses, your kids, you're doing the best you can there. And, fear's an issue. I think that some of us, I know for myself, let me speak for it, can be an issue. But so at the time, what made you kind of like share your story from what even got you to the point of going to the doctor? Was it an annual exam, or how did
Absolutely.
that even happen? And how did
Yeah,
you
sure.
feel when you found out?
Happy to talk about that because I think it's really important to know kind of what happened to me. And I had gone for my annual mammogram in January of 2016. And at that appointment, the doctor had chose to do like some 3D imaging and an ultrasound, which is a little bit more, I think, than they would normally do. And, and I remember just sitting there and praying like, oh, please no biopsy, because I'd had one a few years ago that they determined was some calcification, and that was in the other breast. So she came back to me and she was like, yep, everything looks good. I'll see you next year. And I was like, yay. All right, that's fantastic. Great
Oh,
news.
wow.
And then that was in like late January, early February. And then 4 months later, in April, I was trying to work on getting my summer body, ha ha ha, and I was doing some exercise, just getting back into an exercise routine. I was doing a tricep stretch, and for whatever reason, instead of putting my hand on my elbow, I just happened to put my hand in my armpit.
Mm.
And right there, I felt something that didn't feel right. And I quickly switched to the other arm and felt over here, like, it's not over here. Back to here, like, there's something wrong.
Wow.
And so knew I needed to get in to see the doctor. That was a Sunday. By Friday, I had my diagnosis that I had breast cancer.
Oh, it was
And
that
so
quick.
it did happen very quick. There were some hoops to jump through. When I called the breast doctor, they were like, well, you need a referral, so you have to go to your
Mm.
PCP. I was like, I was just in there a couple months ago. We still need a referral. So I like made that happen real quick. My PCP happened to be in the office right next door, and then I walked it over to them. And then
Okay.
I think they recognized that a mistake had been made. And they got me in very quick. And the doctor I know stayed after hours to do the biopsy because everybody else had kind of left, and he was doing it. And he said, I remember as he was doing that biopsy, he said that, what is in your armpit, I'm confident is cancer. And he said,
Mm.
it's either breast cancer or lymphoma. And he said, I see something in your breast. And I don't know if that's a cyst or not. And we're going to find out, because if I go in and it collapses, it's a cyst. If I go in and it's solid, it's not. So it was solid. And so he sent it out to pathology. And I remember as he was walking out the door, when he was like, it's either breast cancer or lymphoma or both.
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, I guess breast cancer is a better option, right? Because I had heard so much, breast
Oh,
cancer,
about
pink
lymphoma.
ribbons
Okay.
everywhere. And he just went, hmm. And then, and I said, okay,
Yeah.
okay. So Friday, I was at a conference and I got the phone call that we all dread. You know, it's like, hey, your
Right.
results are in. Can you come into the office and bring somebody with you?
Mm.
So at that point, I knew exactly what I was facing. I kind of anticipated anyway. I was preparing myself just in case. What I learned on Friday was that I had HER2 positive invasive ductal carcinoma that had spread to my lymph nodes. And so HER2 positive, I got a whole, like, what I think is like is a PhD in breast cancer
Right.
in the first couple of weeks. What I learned is that there's multiple kinds of breast cancer. I learned that HER2 positive was especially aggressive and is most likely to come up in women that are younger.
Mhm.
I was hormone receptor negative. So what we hear is like ER, PR.
Right.
That was not part of my cancer. It was purely HER2 positive,
Wow.
which means that I have chemotherapy first
Mhm.
and then surgery and then radiation. And because it had spread to my lymph node, it was all three. It had left the breast and it had migrated to begin to spread to the rest of my body. If it leaves the lymph node, it's considered metastatic breast cancer, and at that point does not have a cure.
I have
Um,
a question for
yes,
you. So you
ma'am.
stated that prior to finding out the diagnosis, that you also had already been one time before, and there was findings of calcifications. But was that the same breast, or did you have it in both breasts, or just the one?
It was the left breast, and the cancer side was the right breast.
Okay, so the calcifications were left, and then the cancer was right. Okay,
All right.
all right.
And yeah, and so, but what I did find out, because they did a lot of extra testing, they did an MRI and a PET scan
Mhm.
to see if it had spread. And they identified 26 areas of concern in the left breast. And so they wanted to go in and biopsy the left breast
Mhm.
as well. I decided not to have that done because I knew from the very beginning that I was going to opt for a bilateral mastectomy.
Okay.
And so I kind of at that point said, I'm going to get rid of both breasts. That I'm comfortable with that. I don't want to have more complications from it. So I knew from the very beginning, and because I had made that decision early on, I felt
Mhm.
like I was comfortable with not going through the biopsies. However, a doctor later told me that may not have been my best decision. Um,
Really?
because the cancer in the other breast could have been different than the cancer in my right breast. So
Yeah.
I didn't know that though early on.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting how that works. Like you said, there's so many when we when you get diagnosed, it's like you literally have a speed course in cancer, and you find out that there's so many cancers, there's so many treatment plans, and it's just so much of everything, and it's very specific to the person.
Yeah.
Um, so for you, did they tell you what stage you were in?
They it was right along. It was a 4 centimeter tumor in my armpit, a 2 centimeter tumor in my breast, and so they said I was right on the edge of 2B, 3A.
Okay.
Back when they did staging. You know, they said it was right there. Um, and so, like I said, I got started with chemotherapy first,
Mhm.
and I had a drug called Herceptin, and I had a drug called Perjeta. And the cool thing about this is Herceptin was just FDA approved a few years prior to my diagnosis.
Oh, wow.
Um, and before Herceptin, um, I would have had a very poor prognosis. I would have had a very low chance of survival. And if anybody's ever really interested in the development of Herceptin, there's a great movie called Living Proof with Harry Connick Jr. And it showcases the doctor and his journey about getting Herceptin developed and approved. And if you watch it, have a box of tissues ready. But watching that movie prompted me to write a thank you note to Dr. Slamman out at UCLA because he's the one who put in all the really hard work to get that drug approved. And I am confident that without that medication, without that type of chemotherapy, which is called immunotherapy,
Mhm.
um, I wouldn't be here today. I'm certain that I would not
So
be here
it
today.
was just approved. So you didn't do the trial. It had already been approved by the FDA.
Yes,
Okay.
it had already been approved. It had been on the market about, I think about 3 to 4 years.
Okay.
Um, but still, in cancer terms, that's pretty recent, you know,
Right. And what year were you diagnosed again?
2016.
2016.
Yep, I was
And
diagnosed in 2016, and so it had just been out there just a few years before my diagnosis, and it was revolutionary.
yeah, because now I hear about immunotherapy all the time from various, cancer patients.
Yeah.
So that's, thank goodness.
Yeah, I'm very
Yeah.
grateful for that. And there were some glitches along the way, of course, with chemotherapy. I did lose all my hair.
Hmm.
That was the part that bothered me. I mean, I hate to say it, but somebody said it very well, that in breast cancer, we lose the two things that we often associate with femininity. We lose our
Hmm.
breasts and we lose our hair.
Right.
Um, and because my breasts were killing me, trying to kill me, I didn't mind getting rid of those.
Hmm.
But my hair wasn't trying to kill me. So that was hard. Just honestly putting it out there. But I decided what I would do is I decided to get a mohawk and first, because I'm
Okay.
like, why not? I'm not
Right.
going to do this again, I hope. So I got a mohawk, painted it purple, and had some fun with that before taking it all off.
So,
Um,
what kind of made you, I guess, make the decision about like your treatment, your actual treatment plan? Were there any factors that you want to elaborate on that kind of made you decide that this is exactly what I wanted to do specifically for me?
well, I think one of the things was my mom worked for the American Cancer Society at the time, and she was very insistent about getting a second opinion.
Mm,
And I was nervous about that, honestly. I felt like, really go against my doctor? Like, they're a good doctor. But she's like, no, you have to get a second opinion. And so I did. And the good news was the doctor was in alignment with the other doctor and
good.
said, this is exactly what I'd recommend. They did tell me that it was an option for me to have a lumpectomy
Hmm.
versus a mastectomy. I did not personally feel comfortable with that. I just really, especially given all the other issues in the other breast,
Right.
my thought was, I don't, if I can avoid going through this again, I want to. And
Right.
so that just made sense to me. And as I don't miss my breasts. I love my life, and so I really don't mourn the loss of them. Now I did opt for reconstruction,
Okay.
um, and I had a wonderful surgeon for that. She did a great job, and was really pleased with her work. Um, and they have not given me too much of a problem. A little bit here and a little bit there, but nothing that I don't feel like I couldn't deal with. It's okay.
So with reconstruction, what exactly, like what were your steps? Did you have to do chemo, then radiation, and then reconstruction, and then you didn't?
No,
You just went.
actually, and that was kind of cool, and why I liked the plastic surgeon that I picked. And she said that if we do so chemo first, and that was May through August. I finished my last chemo the end of August. In September, I began the surgeries, which was a series of 3 surgeries
Mm,
back to back. I had the Angelina Jolie mastectomy, where they save part of the breast, and
okay.
then so. Um, the first surgery was to prepare my breast so that they could save part of it. And then the second surgery was the actual mastectomy. And then the third surgery was the doctor went in and switched out. She did kind of rapid fill with the, what are they called? I call them the turtle shells, the expanders,
Expanded. Yes, yes, they hurt.
right?
That's
They
why they
do.
call them turtle shells because
They
they
feel like
tear up.
turtle shells. Um, and so before I started radiation, she went in and put in the implants. And she said that she liked to do that because she had better results long term if she didn't have to operate on radiated breast tissue.
I've heard that a lot, though. I've heard that a lot about radiation and implants and stuff. So, okay. So
Yeah,
that was the way. And you had implants. Which type of implants? And were you able to save your nipples, or is that
we did.
that's
Yep,
too
it
much of
was
a
the
question that you
nipple
don't have to answer?
sparing.
But
Yeah, it's fine. It was the nipple sparing mastectomy. That's the Angelina Jolie one.
yeah,
And I went with like kind of the gummy
okay,
implants. They said that it's this saline implants, I think, can wrinkle a bunch.
hmm,
And they kind of give a little bit of a wrinkling appearance. And they said the gummy just kind of stay in place and don't have that wrinkling. They were not part of the recall, though, as far as there was a big breast implant
right,
recall. And the ones that I had were not part of that batch, fortunately.
yeah.
Trying to think about, yeah, go ahead.
No, those implants, I think they were textured on the outside.
Right.
The ones that were recalled, and they were like giving cancer, a different type of cancer to some of the patients.
Yes.
And I know with the gummies, they were saying, I don't know if your doctor said this to you, that if it were to, I guess, like
Rupture.
pop,
Yeah.
rupture,
Yeah.
they could easily take it out versus like
Yeah.
saline.
Right.
So I
Everything kind
guess
of
it's
would
rupture.
stay together,
Yeah.
like almost like a jelly bean, I guess is the way it was
Hmm.
described. That if a jelly bean was sliced, it would just kind of pop a little bit, but not like pour out
Right.
like a chocolate covered cherry.
Right.
So, um,
Everywhere.
so that,
Um,
yeah, I'm all about the food.
did you do the fat grafting also
I
with it?
did.
Okay.
Yep, I sure did. And that was positive experience overall. A little bit painful, but it's kind of nice to move some fat around in my body. And I had a lot of family members saying that they'd be willing to donate. But I was like, no, I've got plenty. So yeah, that happened as well. And that all of that surgery finished December 8th. So I did delay radiation a little bit. And one of the doctors was concerned. He's like, I really don't think you should delay radiation. I think you should get right in there and do it.
Mm.
But another radiologist had said, no, I'm really comfortable with it. And even though I finished my surgery December 8th, I didn't start radiation until after Christmas. I think it was right before New Year's, right? Actually, it was after New Year's. It was like January 2nd is when I started radiation. Um, and he said it would give me my body a little bit of time to heal anyway. So he was comfortable with that. And when I went into radiation, that was a unique part of treatment because all of the other treatment, I had somebody with me.
Hmm.
You know, radiation is a solo journey. You go in
Wow.
that room and you're in there with a big machine and it's a huge room and they get you all set up and then they step out and you're there.
Mm.
You're there for 15, 20 minutes. Fortunately, it's not too long. But to lay on the table and be in your head. And so the first day I went to get fitted, I was a bit in my head and I said, I can't do this. I can't be here in my head. So I made a decision that when I was in radiation, I had had so many people praying for me throughout that journey. I decided to take those moments every morning to pray for everybody else. And
Wow.
I kind of in my head, I said, this radiation's my superpower to really get this, get that up to God. And
Right.
so that was kind of how I personally coped with laying on that table is putting in my head all the people that I needed to pray for.
Mhm.
And it went by quickly and I was okay and I coped with it just fine.
So during this time of treatment, diagnosis, everything, one question I really want to ask, I want you to kind of touch on like how your family, how was it for your family? Because I heard you say you had teen kids and I had a teenager at my time, when I went through as well. So I kind of want you to touch on that, but also as a counselor,
Mhm.
because you were a counselor even during that time.
Absolutely.
How did that affect you? Did you have to like use your own tools to help yourself? But if you could start with just kind of like your family and then go into that.
So my husband was terrified, but he didn't let that show too much. He was kind of like, "I'm going to be strong for you,"
Right.
but he was really afraid he was going to lose me. He was fantastic. I was very, very fortunate that he really stood beside me and all the whole way through. Super supportive, and did things I didn't know he was capable of doing.
That
Like
vulnerability
the
piece shows
housework that got
everybody.
done, right? I'm like, you know how to do that? Wow. Okay. So no, he was just super, super supportive and I was really fortunate because a lot of women don't get that during their
That's
breast
true.
cancer journey. A lot of husbands get scared and distance or run away. And so I count that as a huge blessing. He just really showed up for me.
Mm.
And then my boys, one boy, they're very different in their personality. And one boy kind of acted as if it didn't bother him at all. He was just
Mm.
like, okay. And
Hmm.
and that was it. And then the other boy though was a little bit more concerned and he was a little bit more present because the oldest one was kind of out of the house at that point and he
Okay.
wasn't face to face with it. My other son, I felt really bad for him because he was graduating high school that year. And I remember when the doctor told me I was going to lose my hair, and I said, "You mean how am I going to go to my son's graduation?"
Oh.
And he's like, "You're going to have a wig. It's going to be okay." But it affected him a lot more. I remember the day that I got the diagnosis, the following weekend, we were supposed to go on a college visit for him. And it was a college out in Illinois. And it was a little ways away. And we were like,
Right.
But we're like, okay. And we were going to make that trip. He'd already been accepted. We were just going to like sign the deal. I got home that evening. We get home right about the same time we would normally get home from work. But that he yelled to us like from upstairs, "Where have you been?" And I'm like,
Oh,
"What are you asking?" And he's like, "Yeah, no, really, where have you been?" Very odd, very unusual question.
right.
And I said, "You need to come downstairs. This is something we need to talk about face to face." And so I made that moment because we were kind of like, do we tell him before? Do we tell him after? When do we tell him? But because he had been so direct in asking us about where we had been, I was not going to be dishonest with him. And so I told him, hey, here's what's going on, but we want to go to your college visit. I said, I don't want this to take away from you and your experience in going to the school you want to. But he immediately made up his mind. He said, there's no need to visit. I'm staying home. Like
Oh, so he made
I'm
that
going to
decision
college here.
because based off what he felt.
Absolutely.
Wow.
He was convicted. He said, there's no way. He's like, there's no way I could go halfway across the United States when you're going through this. And so he was accepted to a couple of colleges. And so he chose the one that was local. The other big thing that we did is we made a decision very early on to move to Virginia Beach. We had always wanted to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we always wanted to do it. We thought when we retire, we'll move down to the beach. We kept our eye on property over the years, just getting familiar with the neighborhoods and everything. And I think about 2 or 3 weeks after my diagnosis, my husband put a contract in on a house down here that we had been looking at for years. We saw it as a ground. We saw it halfway under construction. We saw it finished, and then it just sat on the market for a year. All the houses around it sold, but this one didn't. And so the builder dropped the price, and we made an offer, and it was accepted, and we moved to Virginia Beach
Wow.
right at the beginning of treatment. We just kind of
Oh, at
acted
the
on
beginning
faith.
of treatment. That part I must have missed somewhere because I remember you telling me about this story, but wow, at the beginning, that was a
Yeah.
bold move.
Yeah, really, we really stepped out on faith. And that was my husband. He said, I'm going to make your dreams come true. We're not going to wait for later because we don't know if we're going to get later.
Right.
So we're going to do it now, which was surprising. So we spent a lot of time back and forth on the road between Richmond because all my treatment was in Richmond. The family was in Richmond. And so we were back and forth a whole lot. But being at the beach was very healing for me to come here after chemotherapy and to just even sometimes just lie on the beach in my little tent with my little bald head. And sometimes that's all I could do was just lie there. But to smell the ocean air, to hear the waves, to feel that it was definitely healing for my
Right.
soul. Yeah.
So, can you share a little bit about like being a counselor? I heard you say about like healing and being on the beach and, mental health. That's a lot what we talk about, like
Yeah.
finding places where, using coping skills and different things of that nature. Can you kind of tap into that? Because that had to been, at this point, it's like you're helping people all this time, and then
Mhm.
now some things are you're facing,
Yeah.
and it's changed the dynamic of your life.
Absolutely. I think I'll answer that a little bit in two
That's
parts.
fine.
One was about what to do with my job.
Right.
In my business, I am self-employed and I am a solo provider. So, oh my gosh, how am I going to do that? And then two, and part of that's having good, healthy boundaries, knowing what you're capable of, being able to let go of the things that you're not capable of. And so, that's part of that counseling skill coming in, knowing my limits and practicing good self-care.
Right.
Having a good support system was important, and I'll talk about that as well. But honestly, in a way, there was so much physically happening. And because I had chemo first, and the chemotherapy kind of really slows the brain down.
Mm.
And it was the closest thing I could imagine to just like kind of having like a flat line.
Mm-hmm.
Before chemotherapy, my head's like you know, like always having thoughts. During chemotherapy, there were times where I was really thinking nothing, nothing. It was just like a flat line.
Right.
And my husband was like, "Are you okay? You're not talking." I'm like, I'm fine. So during that first year, it was all to me about the physical healing.
Mm,
And the emotional part for me didn't really kick in until all the treatment was finished.
mm,
And that is when it sat in like, holy cow, what have you just been through? You know,
yeah.
whoa. And so a lot of the counseling skills that I applied to myself came into play at that point, especially dealing with the fear, the anxiety of recurrence. But I'm going to step backwards for a moment, talk about the
Oh, that's
support
fine.
and all of that. When I looked at my counseling practice and what I was going to do, I recalled that I had a colleague who 3 years previously had gone through exactly the same thing. And
Okay.
so I reached out to her. She was one of the very first phone calls I made. And I asked, hey, I'm going through this now and I need to know, what did you do with your business?
Mm.
How did you do this? I was calling for business advice. And she said, I will give you all those answers. But first, let me tell you about Here for the Girls.
Oh, so that's how you found Here for the Girls.
I sure did.
Okay.
So Melissa Weaver, she was the one, and
Oh,
she was just
Melissa. That's right. Our
Melissa,
social worker.
absolutely.
Okay.
And she just brought me to the first meeting. So I was a part of Here for the Girls from the very beginning. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, back when I still had my real hair at the time.
Wow.
In fact, going for the hair cutting thing, I at first I was thinking I was going to do it by myself. I
Mm,
knew I didn't want to take my family because they were already so heartbroken about everything I was going through, and I just thought I can't subject them to watching me get my head
right.
shaved. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to do this by myself. It'll be okay. And as it got closer, I'm like, I can't do this by myself. And so I called Here for the Girls, and I said, hey, y'all, can anybody come?
Oh.
And it was 24 hours before this haircutting party.
Uh-huh.
And they came. Three of them came. They brought champagne. They brought music. They brought flowers, and they really made it a very special experience. And so having that support right from the very beginning
Absolutely.
was priceless. It was absolutely
Yes.
priceless. Yeah.
Support is everything. And I was never one to go venture out to find a whole bunch of support. And, you touched on like your husband being able to do things, but that took you allowing yourself to be vulnerable to allow him to do things for you that he normally haven't done. And, that vulnerability piece, even with allowing ourselves to say, okay, I need support.
Yeah.
I need, I need help during this time. So that
Absolutely.
was, a major move as well.
And I was really, I was so fortunate, like I said, to get in right at the beginning. And what I noticed, before cancer, this was me too.
Mhm.
My friends who weren't going through this, sometimes had no idea how to help. Sometimes they were scared. Sometimes they didn't know what to say, and sometimes they backed off and they pulled away.
Right.
And to no discredit to any of them, because I have absolutely been in those shoes when I've had friends go through things and I didn't know how to handle it,
Hmm.
even as a counselor.
Hmm.
Um, and and so it was really good to have other women in my life who knew exactly what I was going through.
Right.
They just really got it. And so that
Right.
was very helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, extremely. I can't stress it enough. Like you all are like my family for real. Like you're
Hmm.
definitely my
Yeah.
family. We definitely show up for each other. Um, so were there any things that you want to share with the audience about like what you utilized as far as getting through uh
Yeah, I'll
breast
talk a little
cancer
bit about that.
yourself, as far as like you
I'll
were
talk
talking
about
about the
that
bleach
little.
and things of that nature.
Yeah, I'll talk about the second year. So after
Oh,
I
okay.
rang that final bell and Herceptin was completed, the radiation had been done, the surgeries are done, and Herceptin goes on for a full year.
Oh,
So I
wow.
rang that final bell and I said to my doctor, all right, what's next? And she
Mm.
said, you're done. And I said, what? I said, well, how
Scary.
do I keep this from coming back?
Mhm.
And she gave me 5 things. She said, eat healthy, don't smoke, maintain a healthy weight, limit your alcohol use. And there was one other. It'll come to me. But they were all things I was doing when I got cancer.
Mhm.
And, and that was really scary. And that's where I think a lot of the fear kind of got to overdrive. And I
Mhm.
remember at that time thinking there's got to be more. And at that phase, I remember waking up in the morning and it would be a little bit of a game. Like, how far could I get into my day without thinking about cancer? You know,
Mhm.
had I already woken up dreaming about it? Maybe. When I got into the shower, I looked around. Was it this bath product? Was it this deodorant?
Mhm.
You know, there's all this information that goes on around there. And so just kind of questioning, okay, where did it come from? Where did it come from? And what can I do? What do I have to eliminate? I would say that it got easier, but it took a while for those thoughts, you know, because I thought about cancer every single day. I know for a very long time. Um, and now I'm 7 years out from diagnosis. I do not think about cancer every day. I know, I'm so thrilled.
Congratulations. That's a
But
blessing.
yeah, but it still definitely comes up. You know, as you know, once we're finished with treatment, but we're just in a whole new land. You know, there's still things to really watch for and monitor. But one of the cool things that happened is, initially I'm pretty nervous about what I need to do to keep it from coming back.
Mhm.
And I was scrolling the Here for the Girls Facebook page, and somebody had posted an article about a newly released medication. It had just gotten approval July 18th, 2017, by the FDA to
Mhm.
prevent recurrence of HER2 positive breast cancer.
Oh,
So I got super excited. Name of the drug was Nerlinx, and I went to the doctor and I said, "Hey, have you heard about this? Oh my gosh, there's something more I can do. You know, kind of let's do this." And she said, "No." I'm like, what? And she
oh,
said, no, you know, the diarrhea is really bad on that. And I was like, lady, you saw me lose my hair. You saw me like so much worse. Like, let's at
right.
least try it. You know, so I sat with that for a few weeks. I went back to her a few weeks later and I asked again, and she was firm. She's like, nope, I really don't want to prescribe it. And I knew I could not leave anything on the table. I did not want to look back and say, I should have done that. Maybe that
Mhm.
would have made the difference. So I got a second opinion again. And the second doctor said, yeah, let's give it a try. I was her first patient on that medication. And so we navigated that journey together.
Wow.
Um, and it was cool because I was one of the first patients on the medication. There was another Facebook group of people who were taking the medication, and I
Mhm.
was connected with them. And the manufacturer, the pharmaceutical company, was looking for people that were on the medication and how they were doing. And so I talked with them, and they ultimately invited me out to San Francisco. And I became a patient mentor and a patient ambassador for them, talking to other patients who were considering going on the medication and also speaking at groups. And so this is where the fear comes in.
Mhm.
Um, you know, before cancer, I was afraid of a bunch of things. One of them was flying. I
Oh.
had it was shortly after 9/11. There was a flight that crashed in New York City that was different. It was a mechanical malfunction, and in a flight I'd been on the year before. I don't know if it was the same plane or not, but it was the
Right.
same flight. And after that point, I didn't get on another plane until they said, "You want to come to San Francisco?" And I said, "You know what? If cancer didn't take me out, let's roll. Let's go have fun. Let's do everything." And so went out to San Francisco, became a patient ambassador for them. And that was a great experience because I had a lot of speaking opportunities. There was one where I spoke in front of a crowd of about 400 people. Um, and I had never done anything like that before.
Wow.
I spoke in front of small groups.
Mhm.
You know, it's just really pretty cool to kind of like, whatever, you know,
Yeah.
say yes.
So, what was, I know you said that like cancer didn't take you out, so that's why you just like, I'm going to go for it. Was it also about, because I know you're a huge advocate, it was also about other people that are going through or getting ready to go through? Was that part of your mindset as well?
Yeah, absolutely. you know, like me getting connected with Here for the Girls, I knew how essential that was for me and what a difference it made for me. And it really helped me to hear other people's stories, even if they weren't exactly like
Mhm.
mine. It was just really, really affirming to hear from other folks. And so I knew, you know, I wanted to pass that on
Right.
to other people and kind of, hey, here's my experience. Whatever might help you use, and whatever doesn't, that's okay too, you know.
Yeah.
There you're going to have your own experience. And so it was really exciting, especially to get the word out that go ahead and ask for a second opinion. As women, we're often, you know, you know, doctors, you
Mhm.
know, they're up there and sometimes we're really afraid to ask the hard questions or to ask for a second opinion. Um, and I just really wanted to especially encourage women. It is absolutely okay to do that.
Right.
I began to look at it like this is my one body. This is it. This is the one I got. I am in charge of this one.
That's
I
right.
am the primary advocate for this body. Doctors have hundreds of patients.
Mhm.
I've got one body. So I better use my voice to make sure that I'm doing what I can to advocate for it. And then also helping other women to know it's okay to advocate. It's okay to ask.
Right.
Um, and on the other hand, I also said to myself, be the kind of patient your doctor wants to save. You know,
Yeah.
don't be nasty, don't be ugly. You know, there's a tone about
Right.
asking these things. And so I like tried to balance those two out, advocate, but be the kind of patient your doctor wants to save.
I always have this thing like sometimes you have to be firm yet fair. Um,
Yes, yes,
towards even the doctors, it's like sometimes you have to be kind of firm, but you don't have to be rude. You don't have to be, aggressive to the point where they don't want to care for you or yeah, because
exactly.
they're people too. We have to remember that they're humans, they're subject to mistakes and they have feelings.
Most
So
definitely. Most definitely.
so that is amazing. So I guess now it's sort of like what is life for you now? Because I don't like to say after.
Yeah.
But what is life for you now?
Um, awesome.
That's
Like I love my life. And it doesn't mean that it's not without hard days or hard times or problems, but I am so, so grateful to be alive.
yeah,
I am so fortunate. The hard part of being part of a support group is you make friends with people who don't have the same outcome. And
right,
I know each girl I lost along the way, and that's hard. Um, and so I have extra time here. I don't know why I do, and some of them don't,
mhm,
but I don't take that for granted. I am so lucky to be alive. And so what that means for me is to really do the things that are meaningful.
right,
You know, whether it's through my work or it's through my recreational time, you know, don't, you know, if I'm unhappy about something or I'm stressed out about something, okay, feel my feelings,
right.
but don't set up a tent there. You
Yeah,
know, keep moving and look for the really good things.
mm,
Uh, you know, my kids are kind of grown and more into adulthood, so that's kind of nice. My husband and I are doing fairly well. I will add on to that, since cancer, we
mhm.
call it BC, the big changes,
Yeah,
you know, before children, because there's big
yes,
change there, before
yes,
cancer, big change there, and before
right.
COVID, because
Ah,
COVID brought a really big change to our family. As a mental health professional, I did not have the stay at home and relax experience. I was flooded with work.
mm,
Um, and that was great. I was happy to help. And at the same time, my spouse, we got COVID very early. We got COVID before the world shut down. Um,
okay,
and I was fortunate that my husband, even though he did get pneumonia, he was treated in the
mhm,
emergency room, but it wasn't so severe that he was admitted. He came home and he recovered, you know, at home.
right.
And just as he had recovered, and about 3 days later, after he went back to work, he came upstairs and he said, "I've got chest pain. I need to go to the hospital." And if you know this man, I was like, "Do I need to call an ambulance?" Because these are not words that come out of his mouth. Um, and And so that day began a very long journey that we are still on, where he developed long COVID. He became systemically sick. Every part of his body was affected. It was hard because the doctors knew nothing about it. They were looking for the traditional symptoms, and so they very much dismissed him. They don't know what to do for it. We have been to see probably at least 12 different specialists, no real answers. There's a lot of research going on, and we're 3 years out. What that gave me, though, was a real gratitude for the research that's been done on breast cancer.
Absolutely.
I got a disease that people knew about. I didn't have to prove it to anybody.
Right.
You know, there was research that was already been done for years. So there was a treatment plan. The doctors agreed about it. You know, like I was really fortunate.
Yeah.
You know, and so a lot of gratitude for the medical community and everything that they've been doing to, you know, treat breast cancer. But I learned all those skills, like the advocacy, the research, have really come in handy now, because I'm doing all of that. You know, I'm leading the way of trying to figure out what will work for my husband, and trying to research what's going on and all of that, because he's not up to the task. He just doesn't have the wellness to do it for himself. So, but even with that, like, man, life is good. Like it is really, really, really good. We are so fortunate to be here. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. Is there anything else that you want to share with anyone before I ask you the next question, which is kind of like the wrap up questions?
Yeah, no, we can
Anything
wrap
else
up.
that you want to
If there's,
share?
you know, if there's more questions, you can have me on again. But no, I'm good. I don't have anything else to share. I think I'm all good.
Okay. And also for anyone who's listening, feel free to inbox me or DM me or whatever if you have questions for Valerie, and I can make sure she can get them. So with that being said, you chose on your reel, you had your pictures. I had your pictures up there asking people to come and listen. And there was a song, because I always ask people when they're coming on, if they decide, if they want to, what song do they want with the reel? And you chose a Bob Marley song, which is three little birds,
Three
or don't
little
worry,
birds.
three birds.
The official title is Three Little Birds. Most people would know it as Don't Worry About a
Don't
Thing.
worry.
Every
Right, but
little
it is Three
thing
Little Birds. You're
is
correct.
going to be all right.
So with that being said, that's the first question. Explain that song? Like what inspires you about that song? What do you love about it?
For me, that was an expression of my faith. You know, I didn't ask why me, you know, especially when I found out the statistics. I thought, well, why not me? You know, a lot of women get this. And it was just, you know, my faith is rooted in Christian tradition. And I think about when my time comes, I'm calling it my graduation. It's when I get to graduate from life and I get to go into the party, you know. And I have no idea what the outcome is going to be. Even to this day, I have no idea. Is it going to come back? Is it not? I don't know. But what I do know is that every little thing is going to be okay.
Yes.
Every little thing is going to be okay. You know, I don't have to worry. He's got this.
Ooh,
Every little thing is going to be okay.
Yeah. So that's the meaning for that song.
Yeah, that's the meaning.
So the other thing that I have to ask you is, before we wrap up and I share something with you, what is one word that you can share with other people who maybe are developing scars, have scars, maybe they're healing, but what can you share with the audience far as one word, and why would you choose that word to encourage or to inspire them?
Okay, so my word, and it's my word for the year, actually, I chose this word for the year. My word is joy. Joy. Joy is above and beyond happiness. It's connected to rejoice, joy. And that if we set our mind on it, we can can find joy. It is there. And and to just the gratitude for oxygen. We breathe it every day. We take it for granted. I don't know the last time we thought about oxygen. But boy, we'd appreciate it if it wasn't there,
Right.
So even the joy in breathing, how there's just a lot that surrounds us that we can look to and find joy.
That's beautiful. That is so beautiful.
Thank you.
So I want to share a word that I think of when I think of you, and that's gracious.
Oh.
You are one of the most gracious people I've ever met. Within your tone, the way you speak, the way that you exhibit love towards people. People, like, even hearing about your doctor and things, well, they kind of missed it. That's grace. Some people could be very, very angry, could be very bitter, especially with everything that you've gone through. But it's the grace of God, the grace that God has extended in your life, you extend to other people, and you've always been like that. And you're very fair when you operate with people. And I always think of you, honestly, as a gracious gatherer, because you have a tendency, you can meet people where they are. And it's not just about being a counselor, because I've seen some counselors out there who are not very gracious. But you are very gracious. You can truly see and sense the presence of God, whom you serve, in your life, and see it extended to other people. So I want to just encourage you to continue to be gracious and continue to allow, all good things to continue to come to you. And I just encourage you 100% with your walk in every aspect of your life. And yes, that's what I see when I see you.
Well, thank
Gracious, a gracious
you.
gatherer, because you love bringing people together and you love helping people, and you're very gracious as you do it.
Thank you. And I love that you pointed out that the grace that's been extended to me, because that's the power.
Mm-hmm.
It's not mine. It's what's coming through, and just allowing that to come out. So thank you for that. And Christina, I've got to share with you too. I just have to. You are inspiration. That the journey that you have been on, and not just through cancer, but through other things that you have experienced in your life. And you are just inspiration the way you are stepping out and doing the podcast and educating and advocating, and the cover that you did, and the bravery in saying, here I am, and educating about being flat and that's a choice. Like, I'm inspired by
Oh,
everything that you're doing. I think it's just phenomenal. And I'm so, so grateful to be in a calendar with you and to have you as my sister.
yes. Yes, sisters forever,
Yes,
definitely.
ma'am.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I know people are going to be inspired by it. And for anyone who's listening and watching, it will be on all podcasts. Like I stated, it will be uploaded to the YouTube channel. It'll be here. I'm going to also make sure it's on my other Facebook page. Please share her story with other people. She's very open. She's gracious. And so if you have any questions, feel free to DM me, and I can make sure she gets them. And yeah, so thank you all for listening and tuning in tonight. Thank you again, Valerie. I really, really appreciate it. And that's it.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much for what you're doing.
All
All right.
right. Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.